So this is part 2 of the mini teeny tiny drawing tutorial. We're working on an African leopard. In part 1 I show you how to make the outline and also how to pick your colours. So now in this part we're going to get started, and when I draw anything generally I will start with the eyes. What I'm going to use is a dark sepia polychromos, and I'm going to use a really light pressure to add in the very vague outline, as the leopard's got quite heavy dark outlines around his eyes. I'm going to put that in first, but I'm not going to add all of the spots in this layer. I'm just going to add in a few details here and there that will help me place things like the features and maybe some of the more structural spots that add shape to the face. So I'll talk you through what I'm doing as I go along. I'll let you know what pencils I'm using, what pressure I'm using, and then just talk you through my thought process as I'm going. So I like to start with the eyes just because I always find it's a good place to start when you are drawing anything that is alive. It's nice to start with the eyes because that just sets everything up for a good little portrait. I do the same with my bigger ones as well, so yeah, it's just nice to get started on those first. I'm using a light pressure and I've got quite a sharp point. I don't know if you can see how sharp that is. It's reasonably sharp. I mean, it will go sharper, but I find that it will snap, and you don't really want that when you're working on something like the eyes. You don't want the end to snap and then you end up jolting into the eye area and not being able to remove the mark. I've had that happen a few times. It's a real bummer when you can't get the mark out. So I'm going to just do nice light pressure, drawing around the edge of these eyes. I mentioned in part 1 that this is actually the third time I have tried drawing this African leopard and filming it, and the reason that I've struggled so much is because of two things. The first being that I think I just picked really awkward references. So in the first one I picked a reference where the leopard was, like in the full picture, the leopard was up a tree and you could see its paw out in front of it, but where I'd cropped it in so close, the tree wasn't visible and the rest of the paw wasn't visible. So it was just this odd section of a paw. It wasn't really connected to anything, and as I was drawing it, it was becoming more and more apparent that this weird shape was just not looking as it should. So I stopped halfway through on that one. I think I was probably about an hour or so of finishing. These little ones take around 2 to 3 hours depending on how much detail there is. Some of them are a bit quicker, but something like this one where it's a bit more complicated, yeah, it's around 2-ish hours, maybe a bit more. And then the second attempt was a combination of 2 photos. So I was working from one for the outline and then another for the colours. I was trying to adjust the colours as I went, and it did work out fine, but just as I was playing around with them I ended up kind of overworking the paper in one of the eyes, and the paper just kind of gave way. It was looking a bit murky and muddy, and it was starting to tear on one of the eyes, so I stopped that one as well. This is the last attempt, so this one will go well, I'm sure, after all of the things I've learnt from the first 2. And it'll be nice to have you draw along with me as well to see if you can work on this small scale. I'll be interested to find out how you find it. So I'm using the similar exactly the same pressure for this nice light pressure. I'm just adding in details very gradually. I don't want to put any of this colour where it's not supposed to be. Just going around the outline of the nose and I'm marking where the edge of this mouth is. And then I've got the edge of this muzzle here as well. So I've got to count up these. So 1, 2, 3, 4 and a bit. 1, 2, 3. Because I haven't put all of the spots in on the outline, I will have to keep referring back to the reference just to make sure I'm getting everything more or less in the right place. If you really struggle with that, you can add more detail to your outline. It's just, as it's quite small, you might lose some of them in the process of adding in base layers and things like that. So I'm going to mark in these ones because they do add the shape to this, you know, like the curve of this mouth area. Only going to do them roughly because then they will need several layers over the top. One more little row on this one. Right, and then all of this down here is quite dark. I might put in a few of these spots, but I don't want to go too heavy on the darker areas just yet. I find with the 640 paper that it's a bit spongier. I've been working on commissions in between doing these, and I do commissions on the 300 paper, and I just find it so much easier to get nice crisp lines on that 300. I'm going to mark in a little bit of the detail on the ears, but again with super light pressure. Don't know if this is all going to be in focus or not. It should be reasonably in focus, but it's just when my hand's in the way. I don't know if any of you watching have ever had a go at filming yourself draw, but it's a funny process because you end up having to have the camera in a very odd position to be able to capture everything. I know I do with my setup anyway. Right, I'm going to leave it there with the dark sepia for now. I want to try and block in some of the brown markings, so the ones that create the kind of shape around the nose area. So I'm going to put in a base of ivory. I'm also just going to grab a rubber to just lighten up these pencil lines slightly because I don't want them to show through. So I'm using a light to medium pressure here for the base layer. So just going to put in the base layer on this. So I can't figure out what's wobbling. I think it's the table itself. Trying to reduce the wobble as much as I can. Right, I'm going to add in a little bit of the olive brown. Was it 10%? Yeah, the luminance, just to block in where the edge of that kind of white inner eye, the edge of the nose, I'll use a nice light pressure. Just adding in a bit of definition to that area so I can see where the edge is. And then the same under the eye there. What you don't want to do is get any of the graphite outline stuck underneath your coloured pencil on a light area in particular, because you will not be able to remove it. Once the waxy colour pencil's on over the top, you're not really going to be able to budge it. Right, I'm going to get the dark sepia again, and I'm going to pop in that spot or marking underneath the eye. It's quite an important one on a leopard. And there we go, put that one in. I don't think on any of this I'll use a heavy pressure until the very end, so just assume everything I'm doing is either a light or medium pressure. I will let you know if I increase it at all, but generally everything is light to medium. I like to work quite light because it just gives me a bit more flexibility to add in a few more layers. So I've got the ivory. I'm just going to do this sort of round circular scribbly kind of motion to fill in the eyes. I don't want to press too hard because, like what happened on the other one, where the eyes, the paper in the eye area just gave way because I'd worked on it too much. So I'm going to get the brown ochre to put in a bit of colour in the top of the eye. And then I do have this darker tone which I'm going to put in with the olive brown 10%. Work that around the outside of the eye. I'm going to leave that middle bit because that needs to be where the pupil goes. And then I'll get the black and just pop that in the right place. She's got quite a tiny little pupil. So nice sharp pencil, light pressure to start with, and then I'm kind of blotting and doing the tiniest scribbly kind of motion to work that in. Same on this side. It takes quite a few, layers or presses to get that in, get that quite strong. Just going to go over these lines under the eye. And then I'm going to add in a little bit more. I'm going to add in a bit of this Bista polychromos. Get that warmer brown tone in the eye there. There is also highlight in there, so I was looking for a different one. I was looking for a polychromos, but I've only been able to find a Derwent Lightfast greeny colour. There is any polychromos equivalent, but I can't find it. It's in my box somewhere. So I'm just going to add in a tiny bit of this green to the eyes. Get a nice sharp ivory. And just lighten up that bottom bit. And I'm going to get the raw umber. Just add a little bit more shadow on the top there. And then I'll go over the pupils with the black. I think I may have done them a teeny bit bigger than they are in the reference. I can try to go over slightly with the ivory, just to make them a little bit smaller. I also want to try and make sure that the pupils are looking in the same direction, because we don't want a cross-eyed leopard. I'm going to go over that one slightly. I want to make sure he's looking. I think the eyes are one of the hardest bits on these small drawings. Some of them I found just come really naturally, and then others seem to be a bit harder. Right, that's a bit better. Now I'm going to add in some luminance buff titanium. And get that nice and sharp, because I want to add in some of that highlight. Using quite a light pressure still. I don't want it to be too hard, so I don't want to churn up this paper again. It's not too bad. What I'm going to do is just get the Posca marker I have on here. I'm going to use it to add in the tiniest little highlight that just brings those eyes to life a little bit. The good thing about the Posca marker is that it's light fast, so it's the same as your coloured pencils, meaning that it will not fade with light. And also we can work over the top once it's dried. Okay, now that the Posca marker has dried, I'm going to go over really gently with the tiniest bit of this cold grey one, just to blend it in very slightly so it's not such a bright white blob on the eyes. Just makes it look a little bit more natural. Okay, so now I'm pretty happy with the eyes. I may adjust them again slightly as I go through, but I'm trying not to touch the eyes too much because of what happened last time. You don't want to overwork that area at all because, you know, it could be a bit of a disaster. So I'm going to add a base layer to the nose. I'll do that with a warm grey one. That's a kind of medium. I'll show you the pressure actually on here. That is like this. So that would be a light pressure, that's a medium pressure, that would be a firm pressure, so kind of in that middle area, middle pressure, medium pressure. And then I'm going to put some, let me just find it, I've got a dark flesh 5% here, a luminance one. I'm going to go over with that, just a general layer, not adding it in any way, special way, just another medium layer. But obviously we can see from the photo that is too light, so it's going to need toning down a bit. Probably going to add, I'm going to go dark sepia. Oh no, I've got walnut brown. Okay, we'll go with that. I'm going to add that in gradually and just see how it looks. The nose on this leopard is almost a purpley tone, but I'm going to make it more of a kind of brown, I think. Just lighten it up a tiny bit. That's fine. And then I'm going to get dark sepia and just pop a little bit more definition on it, so that little line up the middle of the nose, define the nostrils a bit more. If you're finding it tricky with your pencil, you're probably not sharp enough, so just keep your point nice and sharp. It's hard to do these details with a rounded pencil. Okay, I'm going to put that little edge along the top, just really gently, not going in like full line, I'm doing it really gradually. It's kind of a less is more approach on these little drawings, I find. But then I have tried a few different techniques on some of them, and yeah, the less is more approach has definitely worked out better for me. The overworked ones just look really silly. So yeah, less is more on these small ones. Right, I'm going to define the edge of this cheek here so I know where I'm going with that. Oh, might need to have it the right way around. So I'm using the ivory again, the polychromos ivory. I'm going to define the edge of that cheek, and then I'm going to fill in the edge here, but I don't want the edge outline to be visible. I do not want to catch that with the polychromos, so I'm going to just rub that away like that. I might go all the way down actually, just fill that in with the pencil. There we go. Don't want to come in too far because the chest area is white, so I'll only touch the edge of the neck and shoulder there. I'm going to come in around this edge a bit warmer. You can see here there's a line. These are two separate images, so I will blend that as I actually colour it. So I'll come down to about here. If I need a bit more, I can always add more in when I get to it with the subsequent layers. I'm going to fill that in with another layer so it starts to become a bit more solid, and then I'm going to work my way across the face as well, just pop a base layer in on there. Any areas like this here, for example, is a bit darker, and then obviously around the nose area it varies in how light or dark it is. I'm going to adjust the pressure as I go, so anything that is a bit darker I will press a bit harder, and for the lighter areas I'll ease up the pressure and do it a much lighter pressure. So I'm constantly changing between different pressures depending on what outcome I need, like how dark it needs to be in that area. And add a little bit more around this edge, much firmer pressure there. And then work my way up the face. So I've missed this bit here. Let's just see a light bit across there. But this under the chin here gets quite dark, so I'll go quite firm there. got a bit of shape added in. Right, I'm going to remove the outline of the ear so I can fill that in. Okay, all the way across, get rid of that top bit there as well. Not too worried about removing the the pencil outline, sorry, in the ear, because it's going to have quite a few layers over the top. So that area I'm not too worried about. It's mostly just the outer areas or the lighter areas where I don't want it to be visible. I don't want to see that line underneath. Okay, do a nice light layer over the top of the face. And then I missed this side of the face here, or the muzzle. Pop a bit in there. And then I need a bit over this side as well, so I just remove that line. I only remove it as I'm about to draw on there so that I can see roughly where I was going. I don't want to take too much away, otherwise you can misplace things and you'll lose some of the shape, so just take it away a bit at a time. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that as a base layer. So now I'm going to use the olive brown 10%. I haven't really got a very sharp point, so I'm going to sharpen that one now. That one's nice and sharp now, and I'm going to add in the next layer, just focusing on the darkest points on the face. So this layer will help to add in a bit more structure and shape. I don't want to press too hard because there are other layers that need to go on, so this is medium pressure again, sort of, well, light to medium. Some areas I'm pressing a bit harder than others. I want to figure out, with this one especially, this pencil, I want to figure out the changes in tone and the values that are shown on this bridge of the nose, because it really does give it the shape and define the kind of curve and change of direction of fur and all sorts of things. So there's lots going on in this little bit. It can seem a bit overwhelming sometimes when you've got such a lot to fit in such a small space, but just I find concentrating on one thing at a time, like with this layer, I'm just going to focus on the values more than anything. So putting in the darkest bits and then adjusting the pressure for the lighter areas, and it will help give us a bit more shape to work on for the next layers. It's a bit dark around the edge of the face as well. Right, let's pop this bit in here. There's a bit of a darker section there where it's got a curve on the cheek. And then obviously coming around the nose, there's a lot going on here too, so I'm going to put in that detail. While I'm working on this leopard, I'm referencing a lot the cheetah that I've done as well, because as they're all a part of the same project, I want them to have a similar look to them. So as you can see, this one is finished, but it's detailed, but it's not like mega detailed, so I don't want to overwork any of them, because then it does show up as looking too much compared to the others, and they just look a bit weird next to one another. leopard in. I always find it hard to talk when I'm doing a really precise bit of drawing. It's like talking prevents me from drawing a straight line. Okay, there's a fuzzy bit of fur that goes in just in front of the ear there. And then the edges of the eyes as well, there's quite a lot going on around there, so I'm going to put in a bit along the top edge. Just, I'm looking back at the reference and my eyes are flitting between the two so often, so rather than just drawing what I think should be there, I'm trying to look at the reference as much as I can so that everything is going in roughly the right place. It's funny with this layer, just the lighter sandy colour without any spots, it's looking a bit like a lioness. Just shows how similar they all are. I haven't drawn a leopard in quite a long time actually. I don't know if I've ever drawn a leopard. Oh no, I have done one. A small one. I haven't drawn a big leopard. Painted one. I will be doing a snow leopard soon as a long tutorial. I've been considering whether or not I keep everything on Patreon or whether I add things to my website and just keep it all in one place. So if you have any preference on that sort of thing, whether you like using Patreon or whether you'd be happy to switch over to my website and access things through there, then I'd be really interested to hear from you and see what you think, because I don't want to abandon Patreon if that's where people do prefer to access things, but equally it would be easier to have everything in one place. So yeah, if you've got any thoughts on that, then do let me know. Right, that is more or less there. Oh, I'm a bit dark on that bit, might line that up. Just going to press very gently with the putty rubber, I can just line that, and then I'm going to blend it back in with the ivory. I'm going to go over this bit here as well, so that's kind of blended in, and then we have structure of the face pretty much in. Okay, so now I'm going to add in the spots, I think. Oh, it's always a hard decision with these little ones, I find, like which order to do it in. I don't know, actually, I might add some of the more warmer tones first. I'm going to use Bister, and I'm going to use a really light pressure. I'm using kind of individual stroke marks there rather than the round and round kind of squibbly motion. Just fill these bits in around this edge. I'm going to keep it quite loose though, I think, 'cause looking at that cheetah picture, the drawing of that cheetah, it just shows how less is definitely more, and I can get quite a good result from keeping the details to a minimum. So I'm going to try and keep that in mind for this one. Just adding in a bit more colour here and there where it's needed. And then I have actually got a really good pencil. I didn't put it in my collection of pencils at the start. I need to find it. Here it is. So it's the Derwent Drawing Brown Ochre, and it's quite a nice warm light brown colour. Like, it really blends everything together really nicely. I remember using that on the cheetah and it just helped bring everything together. So I think I will use that again on the leopard. I'll just pop in a bit more detail on here first. Just looking at the way that the fur falls on the face. And it changes direction a lot. And I'm not necessarily drawing in each individual hair in the direction that it goes, but I am keeping most of my marks along the same line that it would be if I was drawing it on a larger scale. I would be drawing in all those individual marks, but I'm just kind of applying the pencil in that rough direction, so it's still following it, even though it is just a block of colour. Be surprised how much that does affect it. If you were to colour it the wrong direction, it does show. Add a little bit more up here, trying to just pick out all those areas where it's quite dark. And there's a lot under this side over here. And a bit more around this side, I think. Okay, need a bit above this eyebrow area. And then I'm going to use this diamond drawing to start blending things together. So just using that kind of circular, squiggly kind of motion. It does look quite orange, but we can tone it down with a blending tonal layer in a bit. So I'm just doing that kind of squiggly, scribbly kind of motion. Don't want to go too heavy on this because the leopard isn't actually that orangey brown, it's quite a sandy colour. This one's just really good for combining the colours and bringing it all together. I am just doing a really, really light pressure. And do it really gently around the edge. Oh, I've got an over slightly. See if I can take that off with the putty rubber. That's a good thing about going really light, is that you're not going to end up with too many marks you can't remove. Okay, happy with that I think. So I'm just going to add this down here. Pop a bit more in on this side because this isn't blended very well just yet. Add a bit more of the Vista. And then blend it. Oh, I'm going to use the Luminance olive brown 10% on this bit. It's nearly done down there. I find it really funny recording tutorials because I actually, on my usual commission work or my original work, I actually work in a really random way. I kind of a bit sporadic, so when I come to do tutorials I do try and keep it quite structured, but it's a bit back to front for me. But if I was to show you how I actually work, it would be a bit here and there. We'd be swapping pencils all the time because I see a bit and then I go over to it and I swap my pencil so often. So I'm trying to keep to the same pencil as much as I can, do one layer at a time. Okay, so we've got nice soft blended fur. I've been using this olive brown just to bring it all together a bit more. I don't want to overwork it, so I'm trying not to go over too much. Just going to add that kind of creamy colour in on the muzzle. It doesn't come all the way in, so just watch where you stop on that, because this area here is a bit whiter. Okie dokie, I think I'm going to add in the ears now. So I'm going to use the pink, what was it, Dark Flesh 5%. I'm going to add in the inner ear colour. This is just the circular scribbly kind of motion, just a medium pressure, just pop that in there. Working this small is actually a bit more loose. You'd expect it to be kind of even tighter on the details and things, but actually you can get away with working in quite a loose way because the details are quite small, so they do come together with minimal effort. I think the other two leopards that I've tried to do, I mean the first one was more composition error, but the second one was definitely, I was trying to do too much. I overworked it really badly, so I think I learnt my lesson there. Right, I'm going to use dark sepia to put the details in on the ears. So I'm going to use just a short, like straight, long, what am I doing? Like a fur mark, so long straight lines, but with a bit of a curve here and there. Don't want, whenever you're drawing fur, it doesn't matter if it's large scale or small, you always want to make sure you're changing the direction ever so slightly so it's not all just uniform lines. I think that's where it can sometimes look a bit flat or unrealistic. I'm just going to fill this little bit down here, and then this section down here is going to need some brown. So I'm going to just pop that in. I might need to sharpen it actually. Okay, just going to do that edge of the ear. Nice sharp pencil, and I'm keeping the pressure quite light. I'm being really gentle with adding in that edge, because you don't want a really hard outer edge because it doesn't look very natural. And add in some more of the longer fur kind of marks. And then same on this side. So I'm going to go behind that soft fuzzy fur. Oh, that's the one that happens. I'm going to just blend that away with polychromos ivory. Just blend it in as if it never happened. What was I using? Bista. I'll concentrate on these lines again. There we go. And then I just need to go down that other side of the ear. This side's actually quite dark, so I might add in a bit of dark sepia or something when I get there. Add in a bit of detail. this area around the nose is going to need a bit more. So I'm going to define those little bits above or to the sides of the eyes, and then bring it into the middle where it joins up. The fur changes direction there. This bit's too dark here, I can see that already, so I'm going to get the polychromos ivory out and just blend that in a bit more. Whenever I'm blending, I do tend to press a bit harder. Okay, now I think I'm going to grab the dark sepia and I'm going to start putting in, I'll just put that little bit of more detail in this ear over here, but then I'm going to start putting in some of the spots, I think. I'll just use a light pressure to add in a bit more shading into this ear. We can add some details on with the lighter fuzzy fur on top with either the slice tool or with buff titanium luminance. I find that one works really well to just add in a few hairs over the top. Just do the same on the side, blend in those edges. Whenever you're going to work over the top of something, you need a dark enough base. So generally, most of the time with colour pencils you do need to work light to dark, but on the odd occasion you can, if you've layered up correctly and you're using the right pencils, you can add a bit of light over dark. So we've got a few layers here, and then we'll be able to add in a bit of detail. It won't be super strong, but we can add in a bit of detail with the buff titanium. So I'll do that in a bit, but I'm just going to start working on these spots now. So I'm going to go around the eye, I think, add in a bit more around there, because that's got quite a defined outer edge. It's got a little bit of detail over the top, where the eyelashes and things are. Right, I'll just add under the eye as well. I'm going to be really careful with this because I don't want to go into the eye itself, but I am using quite a firm pressure. Do the same on this side. Right, I think this bit just needs a little bit more over here, and then I can start adding in some of these spots. So with the leopard, I find that one spot above the eye, I think most big cats have that sort of marking actually, but that one above the eye is a good starting point because it's got quite a distinct shape and it's always in the same sort of place. It's like the start of their eyebrow area. So you can add those in. I use a medium to firm pressure to put spots and stuff in because it's, you need to work over the top of the layers that are already down. Looking back at the reference quite regularly to see where I need to put them all. Once we've popped the spots in, we may need to just add a little layer over the top to define some of the fur, to give it a bit more detail. Do the spots over the eye, make sure they're in. And then you'll find there is a collection of spots that come down the middle of the face. So getting those ones in the right place is quite important as well. Just gonna do the inside of the eye. I just noticed it wasn't quite dark enough. And this is me flitting around again, so I just want to define this nose a bit more. Pop a bit on the mouth there. So that I don't tend to work in a very systematic way when it comes to adding spots and things like this. You may find that you work best at the top, work your way down, something like that, but I tend to just flit about here and there, adding in details. You can place them however you want to, really. You can look at the reference and do them as accurately as you can, or you can be a bit more creative with them, completely up to you. Still trying to compare it to the cheetah. I keep looking at the cheetah as well and just double checking that I am working in a similar way. So that's what I found with the other two as well. They just weren't quite looking close enough to the same style as the others, but getting there, I think, with this one. Go over the spots that go along the muzzle as well. It's got quite a dark patch on this side. Alright, before I carry on with the spots, actually I'm going to just add in a base to that white area. So I'm going to use cold grey 1, and I'm just going to go over the whole thing with a circular scribbly kind of motion. Okay, and then I'll be able to mark in some of these spots as well. We can work our way around it. Again, if you find your pencil's got a bit too rounded, just keep it nice and sharp for all these details, but do watch out for the end snapping off like it did with me a little bit earlier. You don't want to be pressing really hard and then it snaps and goes on your background or anything like that, because it's a nightmare when that happens. You just can't get it off. It's really frustrating. What you can do in that situation is, if you sharpened it and it's super sharp, then just get a bit of scrap paper and apply the pressure that you would be using and just sort of test it out just to see if that tip's going to snap. You can get it off before you start working on your drawing. Let's see if we got any more spots around here. I think we're pretty much done on this side. And then I'm going to work my way around over here as well. There we go. Just keep working my way around and place them more or less where they need to go. I'm not being super accurate with them all. Trying to get them as close as I can, really, on such a small scale. There's obviously quite a lot, like the leopards they're quite spotty. They have a lot of spots on their face compared to some of the others. Like a cheetah doesn't actually have that many spots on its face, they're kind of grouped around the forehead area, some around the cheeks, but because they have those long eye markings, you don't have quite so many around the face itself. Just going to need to sharpen this again. Take that tip off. I do that, make sure I don't want to have a big splat on somewhere I don't want it. Big mark. Oh, it's quite a big difference actually when you first sharpen it compared to what I was using. It's nice to keep it lovely and sharp for these details, makes them much more crisp. The I always call it Fabriano, it's not that. Faber-Castell, this little sharpener, is actually really good for this kind of thing because it doesn't take too much of your pencil away when you're sharpening, it's just sharpening the tip. So you're not losing loads and loads of pencil because they're quite pricey, each one. You don't want to be sharpening them constantly. I try to keep my sharpening to a minimum really. Only do it when I really need to. There's lots of little marks around this centre of the face, and they all kind of join in to that curve around the bridge of the nose, so follow the direction of those marks because they're quite important for that shape. And then they all kind of meet in the middle. A lot of these kind of marks are reasonably, what's the word? Symmetrical. Well, they're not identical, but they do follow a pattern on both sides of the face, so you can kind of use that as a base reference that you're following something that's joining to the middle in a sort of symmetrical pattern. I'm nearly there with these spots across the face. There seems to be so many of them. Okay. A few more around here. Just a few more on the top of the head here, and then I'm almost done on this bit. Once all the spots are in, I'll then take a look at the overall tone of the face and everything and just bring it all together with a kind of layer of detail or a tonal layer or something. Tonal layer I just refer to as a very light layer that is applied across the whole area, so it just brings things together, helps to blend and all that kind of thing. So if something's looking a bit too warm, I'll add a cooler tone, and that helps to balance things out. So I'm just adding a little bit with the dark sepia to this middle of the nose because the area in the middle here is actually quite dark. I may end up adding some more brown into it as well, but I don't want to go too heavy before I've finished all the spots, so I'll finish those first. Keep getting distracted. And then we've got some bigger ones under the chin here, or the cheek. Now I'll leave this area here because it needs blending a bit more first, so I'll put the few that are on the neck. Just finish the side of this face as well. match it. I mean, they are not quite the same as what I have in the picture, but they're close enough. Just add in some of these ones around the shoulder, and then I'm just, oh actually I might do these ones on this side. Big one here. I'm going to do these as more fur strokes rather than scribbly spots, because on the chest the fur's a little bit looser and longer than on the face. Right, so for this edge here it needs to be a bit darker, and I need to blend in this bit here, so I'm going to go back to the olive brown 10% to just add in that corner of the shoulder, and then I'm going to use it to blend these areas as well. And oh, I'll just do that bit under the chin. And then I'm going to use the cold grey one, but with a bit of a firmer pressure now, and then just go over with a fur kind of motion, like the individual fur marks. Again, it's not actually individual fur size because we're working so small, but it just gives a bit of a hint of detail with this scale. Might make it a bit sharper actually. Oh, this one seems to be coming together a lot better than the others, so that's good news. Sometimes you just have to keep going until it works out. Right, I'm also going to do the inside of the muzzle and the chin. I'm going to use a warm grey one for that, so follow the direction of the fur as you put it down, doing a medium pressure, just filling in that area. I'm going to pop a bit up here as well. Actually, I've noticed I'm missing a spot around here, so pop that in. And just go over that edge that runs underneath the eye there. It's quite defined, that area. And I think I'm just going to go over the nose with another little layer of dark sepia, a really light layer. Just pop that on the top. Right, so I'm going to put a bit of this over here as well to help blend those two areas again. Bit of bistre along the very edge to warm it up a bit. And do those individual fur strokes and keep them quite short, and use quite a light pressure as well. Same over here. Don't need too many, but just enough to give the impression that it is furry, not just flat. Okay, now I'm going to add in a bit more of this over here, just to warm this area up. Gradually lifting up, easing up the pressure as I get to that chest area. I'm going to do that with the strokes again to give it a bit more detail. A bit here, there and everywhere, but I am using the bistre still just to help blend everything together. Just noticing any areas as I go that need a bit of work. So this area over here is a bit too light, so I'm going to add in a little bit of bistre to darken that up slightly. A bit more detail above the eye. quite warm on the inside here. Follow it around. I'm using a really light pressure, so I don't want it to go too dark. And I don't want it to become muddy either. That's the one thing you want to try and avoid with this sort of drawing where it is really small. You do not want to overwork it and let it become muddy, because there's just not really a way of rectifying it, because there's not enough tooth where you're working on it so small. Everything's kind of compact, so yeah, try and be light with your layers, and then just keep referring back to the less is more kind of mentality and thinking, do I actually need to add in this layer, or am I pressing too hard? You may find that it takes you a few attempts as well just to get your bearings with drawing on this scale, because it is a bit different. The first few that I did took me a lot longer than some of the other ones, now that I've got the hang of it a bit more. This one was particularly tricky just because of other factors. That composition plays quite a big part on and on anything really of artwork. Any composition that doesn't quite work will probably not come together. So if something's the wrong size, or it's just not the right positioning, not capturing the right pose or anything like that, it can be just minor things, but they do make such a big impact. So it's a shame when you work on something for hours and hours and then you think, oh, it's not quite the right size, or it's not in proportion with whatever else you have in the piece of artwork. So play around with composition on something like Procreate or Photoshop, anything like that, where you can just see it in an almost finished state, mock-up kind of thing, before you start working on it, because then you'll save yourself hours and hours if it's not going to work out. But again, it's a learning process, so if you just keep working at it, you'll find what works and what doesn't work. I'm just going to go over with the olive brown 10% just to warm up some of these lighter areas, because now I've darkened the brown areas. The lighter areas are a bit too light, so they don't really look realistic, so I'm going to just darken those so they look a bit more how they should. A bit more maybe on this side. And then along the top of the nose there, pop a bit across this nose, the bridge of the nose. And then blend this bit in a bit more. And I can add the spots. Oh, I've just noticed this is a bit too light as well over here. Get that fuzzy hair in. Okay, now I'm going to get the spots in on the chest and shoulders. So I'm putting them in with dark sepia first, but I will probably go in with black as well, just to define them a bit more. But I don't need them to be super black, because then I find everything then looks a bit too contrasted, and then it doesn't look very realistic. So I like to use dark sepia, so it gives me the chance to keep it more natural, and then if it does need a bit more definition, then I can go in with the black. But obviously you can't really take the black away if you go in with that first. So it's just something I've learnt over the years of using them. I do tend to prefer the dark sepia first of all. I do use black from time to time. It's not like I don't ever use black, but I just find it's not always necessary, because when we think it looks black, it's actually not entirely black, like it's not jet black. So it's the same with whites really. Like our brain can convince us that something is white, but then you actually look at the colour, if you used to use a colour picker or something, and then you'll find that it's actually blue or green or pink, or there's so many colours in white. So yeah, same with black. It just gives the flexibility then to add in more if you want to, or leave it a bit lighter. So I'm using a medium to firm pressure to add these spots in, and I'm trying to use the kind of short individual fur marks to add them in as well, so it gives the illusion of the fur on the chest. I'm going to run underneath that chin so that we can see it. This area over here is quite dark, and there's lots of big spots underneath the chin there. This is where we kind of merge two photos, so I'm just going to follow what works best in the space. Again, you don't need to be too precise on this thing because every single big cat is different, so the spots are never going to be identical on each leopard or cheetah or stripes on a tiger, all of that kind of thing. So it's not really the end of the world if you don't get them exactly right, unless you were commissioned to draw a very particular animal, like one individual. You might want to get them a bit more accurate then. Right, nearly there. And then I'll just be adding in things like a bit of definition around the mouth. I might tweak the area around the nose here, and then I'll just add in the lighter fur in the ears and the whiskers. So almost done. And then when I've done those, I'll just see what the spots look like in dark sepia, and some of them may need a tiny bit of black added to them, but yeah, pretty much there. So I'm just going to grab the warm grey one. I'm going to add in a tiny bit of definition on this fur. Just using the firm pressure, but just a short, sharp marks. And then across the chin, I'm going to add in the little spot details. So do a nice firm layer on that, and then add in these little spots that they have across the chin, being really loose with those. I'm not being fussy with where I put them. Don't want to blend that out though, I don't want the spots to come too close to the edge, otherwise it looks like it's all fuzzy when it's not. So the bottom of the chin there looks a bit bumpy for me, so I'm going to have to do something about that to rectify it, make it look a bit more natural. And I'm just going to add in another layer of the warm grey one to the inside of the mouth, and then I'll sharpen the dark sepia, and I can put in these spots here really precisely. Okay, something like that. A tiny bit more detail around that nose area. I think that inner eye needs to come over a tiny bit more, and this one can be brought in a tiny bit as well. Oh, I'm much happier with this one, it's come out a lot better. It's always nice when something comes together eventually. Just going to use the dark sepia just to add in a bit of fair definition around this neck area. I want to do this before I add in the whiskers, because this is a bit awkward to do once the whiskers are in. So make sure any area where you are adding whiskers or anything over the top, make sure you've finished the base layer, because you don't want to be going backwards and forwards because it's a bit awkward. Do the same on that side. What I am going to do is grab a pencil I didn't initially have, which is, so it's French Grey 30%, it's a luminance, and if you haven't got this then there is Warm Grey 3 would probably be closest, I think. Just going to add in a little bit more detail on the chest area, tiny bit on the chin, around the muzzle. Only the teeniest bits, and then I'm going to just tone that down a tiny bit on the ear there. There we go, and then I'm going to just add in a few little spot details where I can see there's gaps. And then get the buff titanium, which is a luminance, and then I'm going to use that to add in fur on the inner ears. As you can see, it lies quite nicely over the top. Don't need to worry too much about it not showing up, because it does show up just enough for what we need. Add in a bit more fuzzy hair on the inside of the ear there as well. And then I'm just going to apply this to anywhere that has a bit of a highlight, just to give it a bit more oomph. There are a few areas that I may tweak, I might continue to tweak, but I'm pretty happy with how this has turned out. And I'll just show you actually the comparison between the other drawings I did. I'll just show you what went wrong with them. Oh. Just going to use this on that chest fur as well, just to blend it a bit so it doesn't look quite so blocky. Make it look a bit softer, a bit more natural. I love the buff titanium. I'm using quite a firm pressure here. It just brings everything together a bit more, which is what we want it to look natural. Nicely blended. There you go. Right, I'm going to use the slice tool for my whiskers on this one. So I've got this one here, the craft knife, and I'm just going to follow it around. Try not to think about it too much. If you overthink whiskers, then they do tend to go a bit funny. So just use the smallest part of the knife. Don't do it on an angle, because otherwise you'll end up with a fat whisker. I'm just going to use it to add in the tiniest little details here and there, but generally on the smaller drawings you don't need to add that much. Again, less is more. Just going to go over little bits around the muzzle, and I'll add a few longer bits on that chin. I'm pretty happy with how he's turned out. It's not identical to the reference, but I'm not too worried about that. And as I say, I may do a little bit of a tweak here and there, but it's worked out okay. So just looking at it through the camera, I can see that the eyes are maybe a bit too small on my drawing compared to the reference. So I may adjust them slightly, but I think I'll probably leave it pretty close to how it is. I will just show you now what I was working on before. So this is the one that I feel like I overworked a bit. The fur is just a bit too smooth and too refined, but then around the eye area, I don't know if you can see, but the paper kind of gave way a bit on that, so it just looks a bit murky and muddy. And then this is the other one that I started on, which has the paw in the foreground, and it probably would have worked out okay, but I just didn't like that composition. It just looked a bit weird. And I think with these two as well, having the mouth open on both of them made quite a big difference to the overall look, and I think I just preferred the closed mouth in the end. So yeah, that's him pretty much finished. I probably will adjust a few bits just around here, maybe might do that now actually, just pop a little bit more of a definition around there, just to give that a bit more shape, and then use the black just to go over some of those darker spots. Yeah, there we go. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you have any questions about drawing on a smaller scale or anything that I've mentioned in the tutorial, then just get in touch and I'll be happy to chat with you about it. I hope you enjoyed it, and I would love to see any of the little drawings that you do and send them my way. It's always great to see what you're up to. Bye!